Oh, but hello there, you beautiful internet and you amazing creatures of the beyond. Welcome, welcome. I have been expecting you all. So, source material. What's that all about? Well, I recently watched a movie called Prey, and it's done this year or last year, I can't remember exactly. And it's a movie about the predator, but it's called Prey. It goes out of its way to call itself that. And it's not a bad movie per se, but there are a lot of flaws with it. Not as many as some of the previous movies that didn't do so great at the release, but still very noticeable, especially with the visuals. The renders were just horrendous. And it kind of shows because in this day and age, movie companies are kind of disjointing these 3D generated creatures and giving them to various studios, and it shows the style. They look very distinctive, especially with the part with the bear. The bear looked so unrealistic. It took all the immersion out of the movie. And I think that most of the budget went in the Predator generation, 3D generation. Well, in some cases, but it looked off by a lot. And when I talk about source material, we have to understand the initial genre of these movies that attracted people. And the genre revolves around the Predator. And there were quite a few movies released for Predator. There was even Alien versus Predator, which was all right. It was still pretty much Predator and Alien like. It was a very interesting combination, but still difficult to pull off. And they kind of did. And Predator 1 and 2 were iconic for their movie stars and for how the Predator was presented. Uh, and then it failed with Alien versus Predator, the second one. Then it had a very interesting comeback with Predators in 2010 with Adrian Brody out of movie stars that could have played. He played it quite well, in my opinion. He did an amazing job. And some people can say that the movie was not as interesting and as the first two movies, but I have to say that it brought something entirely new to the table. It because it didn't re-envision the Predator, it just expanded on the Predator lore and their character arcs and their culture and how their habitats are, how they interact between their hierarchies, and a lot of interesting things there. Too many to go through in this video. But then they sold the franchise to another studio, which I forgot which one, and they made the Predator in 2018, which failed completely, and then Prey, which didn't do too great. It wasn't a bad movie, but it didn't do too great for a very specific reason. It forgot about the source material. Why this movie became, or I mean, this franchise became very popular in the first place. And the problem is that in the source material, the as I said, the movie revolves around the Predator. But in these other three movies, the Alien versus Predator, Requiem, The Predator, and Prey, they made the Predator quite generic monsters. Instead of revolving around them, they skewed the formula that was presented in the first place to the audience. And you can insert in there any 3D generated monster, it wouldn't matter in these three movies that I named. Because it takes too much, it takes away too much of the focus on the predator and it puts it on the humans. They insert the human drama and so on. And that is all right in a movie, but the moment you present the predator just something for granted there that people already have heard about, and you dumb it down to the point where the predator is just a dummy and is not clever. It's not a hunter. It's just a monster who just looks scary and frightens people and just goes rar and attacks and chases. It's just silly. But in fact, the predator is a very clever hunter. It bides its time. It plays with its victims. And to these three movies credits, there is a little bit in there, but too little to compensate for the rest that is lacking. And if we apply this principle to any art in general, we understand that something becomes popular based on how the first impression is created, but not always. And I'll give you a very clear example. The Addams Family. The Addams Family, when it first came out, it was, I believe, in some sort of cartoonish way or comic book way. I can't remember exactly, but it looked very off. It didn't have a lot of traction, it didn't have a big audience, but a Hollywood studio really saw the opportunity into that and they created a movie. And the movie became the source material. And everything after started to be revolved around the said movie or movies, because there were two of them. And many more others that they created series and so on. Uh, Actually, it started with the series and then they created the movies. My mistake. Yeah, so basically, the source material can morph into something better than what it was initial. But then when you look at what made it popular versus what was presented in the first place, which one do you choose? And I think for clever studios, they go with what made it popular instead of just the source material. Because source material is what is liked in general. It's not necessarily like a very strict set of definitions that can be altered in small ways to create something new. So you have to focus on the elements that really attract the audience. Sorry if I'm mumbling a bit because I'm trying to arrange the thoughts in my mind. But the idea is this: if you make a masterpiece, that masterpiece sets a high bar. But if you start with something sketched on a handkerchief and from that you create a masterpiece, you go strictly up to those high bars. And everything under will underperform. Everything over will raise the bar and will make the audience love it even more and request it even harder from the studios to make something more amazing next time. And it's interesting because if you go from Predator 1 to Predator 2, you see this evolution of the Predator. You see that it goes from a single Predator to a conclave, and they have these unwritten rules, and they have new weapons. They they show that there are specific types of hunts. You have to earn your hunt and your trophies, and then you can evolve to the next step. And in their culture, you gain the what's it called? A priority or the honor to wear much more stronger armor and more ornaments and more sacrificial weapons and so on. So it's a very interesting take on the Predator because even though the Predator is an alien, it still connects to our culture because if you take it side by side, the Predator takes a lot of influence from maybe the tribal parts of our history, and they they work kind of like that. It's maybe more oriented towards Japanese kind of culture because of the honor system, But maybe this applies to many other tribal communities as well. So I cannot judge that. And yeah, the source material is very important. So if you're gonna create a piece of art and you want to make a sequel after it, make sure you understand the formula that you created your initial piece of art. Because if you're going to disappoint in your next piece, at least go back to the drawing table and analyze what went wrong. And of course, you can always expand and create alternatives. For example, the Spider-Man. Spider-Man 1 was really loved because of its simplicity yet powerful messaging. Then they rebooted it a few times, and the second time didn't go so great. The third time it started becoming better because it really brought out that teenager part. But some things were lost there because while every movie has its own source material at this point. Every iteration of this initial start, and now they're kind of combining it. It is a bit of a mess, but still, if you look them in parallel, they look amazing. And yeah, I know they went with the Spider Verse and whatever. It's a whole mess over there. But for me, Spider-Man 1 was always the source material. But then when I saw the other two, I said, well, these have to be individual works because they have their different character arcs. They're trying to go into different directions, kind of. They're still trying to look at the initial story that was envisioned in the comics, but try to do their own thing. So you can create divided or standalone source materials from the same subject, which is still interesting and amazing. Well, I hope I didn't melt your brain as I have melted mine, but I wanted to get off my mind because, yeah, I find it very, very appealing to do something like a magnum opus, which is your greatest work, and then see where you can go from there, how you can challenge yourself further from there. Okay, guys, you stay awesome. See you in the next episode. Bye, 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 bye.